Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'll call the regular board meeting of the Crow Wing County, September 8, 2020, to order. If you'll stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we have a special guest with us today, so I would like to call up County Attorney Don Ryan.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, County Board. Today I have Lydia Marone with me. Lydia is the only member of the Crow Wing County Attorney's Office who predates me. Which means she basically raised me as the county attorney. When I came, we were actually earlier today, we were over on third floor here. So when I was first elected county attorney, we had 3 little rooms, these 3 little storage closets over here. That was our entire office. And we had 2 people per room, and then eventually we were allowed to have 2 spaces on the first floor of this building, which was really expanding at that point for us. And so Lydia's been here through everything we've done for the last 26 years, and for the last 22 years has been my right-hand person, and actually has been the person running the county attorney's office. And so it's really going to be a big change when tomorrow she comes in for the last time. And so, I don't know, Lydia, if you want to say anything. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I know that you probably have a presentation to make, and I won't take up any more time.
We do have a certificate that we would like to provide to you, Lydia. So if you would come up front here, and if the board will join me down there, we'll have a picture taken with Lydia.
With our masks, too.
I'm allergic to cameras.
As long as she raised you, you got to get up there.
Bill, squeeze in a little bit. Don, squeeze in a little bit.
I got everybody in there. You're good. All right. 1, 2, 3.
What a handsome brood.
Yes. Congratulations.
You don't have to leave if you don't want to. All right, our next order of business is open forum, and I believe we have one individual.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Cindy, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. I appreciate you taking the time to hear me this morning. I suppose I really should give you a little background of who I am. I thought it was very interesting to hear Mr. Ryan talk about the changes in his office. Well, I've seen a lot of changes too since I've become a resident of Crow Wing County. I've spent my 40 years as a teacher for the Brainerd School District, and I've lived out on the end of Bluegill Road. And during that time, there have been numerous changes. We didn't have the Cuyuna Range Rec area. As a matter of fact, my husband was on board to to help create this. And we've seen many changes. Now, I know that you each have received my letter, my husband and I, the letter in regards to the shooting range. So I'm not going to take up your valuable time rereading it since each of you received this. Rather, I am going to just reiterate the three main points of why we are against it. One, the noise pollution, the safety issues for the neighbors, and the numerous recreational enthusiasts who have come into our area. Also the increased traffic on the county roads. Now, I've had an opportunity over the very busy Labor Day weekend to go down Bluegill Road to a few of the neighbors, and I have asked them to sign a petition stating that they are against the proposed shooting range site in the location of Trommel and Irondale. I'm not exactly sure what you would like me to do with these signatures, but I will, conclude with that and open it up, and perhaps you can advise me what I should do with the signatures that I have received. Again, thank you for your time.
Mr. Houle, do you have some advice for Ms. Kuschel?
Mr. Chair, members, as you're aware, we are out in a public comment period right now regarding the shooting range. Crow Wing County's involvement with the potential for a shooting range. We've been approached by the Cuyuna Conservation Club, and they have requested the use of some tax forfeited property for a shooting range in the eastern part of the county. Our involvement with that is as a leaseholder only. Typically, there would also be a public involvement process that the city of Trommel and Irondale Township, who do their own planning and zoning, will need to do as well. So our typical involvement with a shooting range would be through planning and zoning. That's not the case here. This is a lease arrangement. So I would encourage Ms. Kuschel and anybody else who has public comments to submit those comments to Crow Wing County. There is a space on our website right now for you to do so. And so I would encourage any and all people that have comments to submit that now is the perfect time to be doing so.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kuschel, we appreciate it. And if you'll submit those to the County Land Services, we would appreciate it.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion to review and approve the minutes from 8/25/2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion moved by Commissioner Hoag, seconded by Commissioner Franzine. Therese, if you'll call the roll call.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Mr. Administrator, are there any additions to the agenda?
I don't believe we have any.
Okay. With that, I would take a motion to review and approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Franzine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Coring. Therese, if you'll call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Consent agenda. Any changes to that? If not, I would look for a motion to approve.
I would so move.
Motion by Commissioner Brecken,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hoag. Therese, if you would call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. We're on to number 6, and this will be the City of Nisswa recycling request. Ms. Max will present.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you.
Perfect. Good morning, Crow Wing County Board of Commissioners. My name is Jenny Max, and I'm the City Administrator for the City of Nisswa. I appreciate the time with you this morning. I'll try to keep my comments brief and just leave some time for questions if you have some for me. I believe in your packet, you received a letter that the City of Nisswa sent to the county board with regards to our recycling center. And since finding out in May that the county recycling program would be changing starting in 2021, we have been working on what that means for Nisswa and working on what a new long-range recycling program looks like for our community. As we've started to kind of ask a lot of questions, you know, they become more questions and answers with regards to some things, and I'm guessing this is probably true of the county side of things as well, but 2021 may be a bit of a transition year for us. And we're trying to figure out how to get through that transition and into a really thoughtful 20 to 30 year program for our recycling center. Part of that long-range planning is we sent out a community survey, and I provided the results thus far for you, just in case you were kind of curious as to who was responding to our survey and the types of things that they're looking for our recycling center. And one of the things that we have determined is just that to create a true enterprise fund and do this right for our community, and also to provide an asset and an amenity that we feel is valuable countywide, we just need some time to do that. And working with our current hauler, Waste Partners, they've quoted us a cost of $70,000 for 2021 to service our drop-off recycling location. And that for us is an immediate impact to our levy, and the county certainly understands what that means when you have a big change in programs and costs. And what we're looking for today is consideration of partnering with the City of Nisswa and sharing in that cost. I know that with the new policy that the county adopted in May, there's an opportunity for cities and townships to receive a 50% match on the funding costs for any local programs that we would like to continue on individually. However, I don't believe that the county will have a hauler contracted for 2021 until middle or end of November. And for us, that just becomes really challenging, you know, timing-wise, to be able to set something up and have it ready to go in January if we wait until November to see what how the county's process plays out. And so we are looking to try to finalize our program for next year, just maintain it as is, and then continue to work on a long-range plan that we can have a self-sustaining enterprise fund for the city. And so with that, we are requesting a $35,000 contribution that's 50% match for the cost for our program for next year. And that, I believe, is really where we're at this point. I'm happy to field questions or feedback or comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So Gary Griffin, if you'll come up to the mic, please, and what was our cost for Nisswa last year?
Good morning,
I guess
Chair,
it would be for
Commissioners.
2020.
Yeah, for 2020 was almost 95,000.
So this is a significant reduction that they're asking for here.
Correct.
And for the board members, one of my concerns was that we're all trying to set our initial levy, and Nisswa is no different. And so the RFP isn't going to go out until October, is what I understand. And therefore, to Ms. Max's point, they're trying to set, get their budget in line, and I think we're going to be addressing that same issue. So to me, I guess I feel their pain up there that they aren't able to really determine what that initial budget number is going to be, and I think given the significant reduction that's taking place, that we should take a serious look at this, and from my perspective, I think it's a good deal at this point. We will be in the future offering 50% if they want to participate, correct, under the RFP?
Correct.
Or any other, it could be Crow Wing Township, could be any township or city within the county.
Mr. Chair, that's correct. Of course, we always may need to revisit depending on overall costs, but currently that is the plan.
Okay,
If I can.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just, we adopted a new policy on June 23rd. Ryan Simonson and myself attended a city council meeting up in city of Nisswa on June 17th. So we let them know at that time, at that board meeting, or at the council meeting, excuse me, that they could roughly kind of anticipate about 50,000 if they needed a number to help with their levy consideration at that time. Basically taking our 2019 number and saying, what's about half of that, and adding probably a little bit. Now, the numbers that the city of Nisswa had given you for consideration today is very positive in that it's a pretty good reduction into what we actually were paying last year. So that's a very, very positive thing. At the same time, we have been communicating with Nisswa, and hopefully you see that we've been trying to give them options as well.
Mr. Chair, too, on, Waste Partners, one of the requests that they're having is that they can keep Waste Partners for this, but Waste Partners has made, I believe, a significant investment in regards to the dumpsters that they've added, and I've, over the years, have seen the service that they have provided for that, so I think they do an excellent job up there.
Thank you.
Gary, with Waste Partners, the language in that $70,000 quote or proposal, how does the contamination fees and all of that work into this?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hoag, I honestly don't know. That would be a contract between the city and that hauler. Currently, that is not our contract.
Oh, okay, so we wouldn't be on the rope for additional fees over the 35?
I would assume not. I would be for your consideration today.
Ms. Max is indicating that we would not be on the hook for additional fees.
That is correct. We will work with Waste Partners. They have factored in at least as much as they can predict for those costs, but we would just ask for one flat contribution from the county and then address the rest of it with Waste Partners if there was an issue.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I thought we had a conversation, the solid waste committees had several conversations that we made the decision just to have recycling at Ideal and at the landfill. Didn't we decide that? Or am I
To me?
getting, yeah, I'm asking you.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, yes, you guys voted and adopted a new policy for recycling on June 23rd.
Right. And that was having 2 locations.
Correct, with a 50% cost match if a city or township wanted to participate.
If they want to have a location.
But use our contract, our hauler.
Okay. So Gary, can I ask another question?
Go ahead.
So where are we at with recycling? I know for a while there, I talked to the Paul that owns Nisswa. He pulled all his cardboard dumpsters because cardboard went from $150 a ton baled down to $30 a ton. It wasn't even feasible. He couldn't even pay for his fuel to take it down to the recycling place. Is there any recycling that's being taken? I mean, I think this whole recycling thing, it sure makes you feel good, but is there any place to go with the recycling things? Are we even recycling mattresses anymore? I know I came into a meeting last week and I called Tim Bray, and on Thesey Road there was a queen-size mattress right on the side of the road. I guess apparently that's where they're recycling them, just throw them right out. So is there any recycling going on?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, absolutely. We have, the mattresses are being recycled currently. The contractor that we use in Duluth has been open for about a month now, so
Okay.
we've been really busy with mattress recycling. As far as the other recycling, I understand that cardboard has made a rebound in price. I think a lot of it's to do with the home delivery and the cardboard boxes that you need, for all that stuff being shipped to your home, is my understanding. And what I can say out at with the city or the Township of Ideal, They are seeing a significant increase in drop-off recycling, and so is the landfill location. So it seems to be so far going pretty well.
So can I ask one more question, Mr. Chair? So if this is our policy, if like, you know, I know that Crowing Township in my area, they had a good program going, and if they wanted ask for 50% participation, you said that's in our new policy. Why are we even discussing this today? If that's in the policy, why wouldn't we just, if somebody comes like Nisswa, why wouldn't we just grant that to them?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, the little difference here is the city of Nisswa wants to keep their current hauler. They are nervous or concerned, if you will, that if we go out for an RFP, which we are going to, we've targeted October, and a little bit on that is we do a lot of budgeting, right? And so we understood if any township or city came to us, we would pretty much say, well, budget 50% of what your cost was last year, and we'll move forward with that, so that they had a number so they can go through their process as well. However, with that, so we targeted October because we have summer is kind of our busiest time, so we figured we would tackle that later on in the fall and get it ready to go for 2022. However, I would say that our goal was to have one hauler for all of our drop locations in our county. We believe, if you will, economy by scale will drive the cost down even cheaper than what Nisswa is probably going to get from Waste Partners on a one-off deal with a city. That's our belief. We're gonna find out here in a month or two. But a little thing that's different is now Nisswa is looking to potentially. I hadn't heard this until I had read that letter that they sent to you folks. Potentially just take on their own recycling program and figure out how to fund it moving forward. Potentially without our involvement, is my understanding. Mm-hmm.
That's correct. That's one of the factors, at least as far as once the county determines who your contracted hauler is, and then giving us the time to determine if that will be a good partnership with us as well, and what we have seen in our community in the past with experiences with haulers. So it is mostly, to answer the question too, from my end, it's just mostly timing. Because we want to move forward with our existing hauler, and that may or may not be ultimately who the county chooses for 2021, and want to make sure that we're all on the same page about this 1 year, and then see how things move forward with your contracted hauler after that.
Commissioner Hoag?
This question may be for the Nisswa administrator. What is this program just specific for the residents of Nisswa, or does it factor in some of your townships, your surrounding townships and stuff to use this program?
Our program is available to anyone. I mean, countywide, and even beyond that, we have many seasonal visitors who utilize the drop-off location as they're leaving town after a week up here visiting. So it's open for everyone, and we hope to continue that. And that's our goal, certainly, to provide an amenity for the greater population in our area.
Good. Administrator Houle?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Gary, there is already a policy in place that allows us to set up recycling centers. You adopted that back in May, to Commissioner Coring's point. And I want to just make sure that we're seeking clarity here. What is the variation from that policy that the city of Nisswa is seeking?
Mr. Chair, County Administrator, the difference is they want $35,000 and stick with their current hauler, and we do not know if that's the hauler for 2021.
Okay, and so then the follow-on question is, what's the replicability issues? If you did this with Nisswa, what are the replicability issues with other jurisdictions throughout the county?
It's a little bit of an unknown from the standpoint of if we have other areas that want to keep their own hauler, it's up to the board if they believe this is setting a precedence or not.
And when does the city of Nisswa need a final answer from us?
Well, we're in the month of setting our preliminary levy, so I am going to present to our council 2 versions, one including levying the funds necessary for the program, and then one without. The city council values the recycling program, and so I anticipate that they will make the choice to include it, at least for our preliminary levy, and then continue to work from us, or work with you to make that decision. Ideally, the sooner the better, but if it has to wait until just before our final levy decisions in December, I mean, we will wait, but just hoping that based on the dollar figure being requested, that this would be something we could kind of make a decision on and move forward. But if you need more time, that's understandable as well.
Mr. Chair, Gary, how would it impact the county if each city that wanted to continue with recycling would choose to have their own hauler?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Franzine, if every city and township wanted to do that, we wouldn't have enough money. But I will say that currently we only have interest from Nisswa. We maybe have some interest from the township of Crow Wing. Other than that, we've heard from nobody else that wants to continue with their recycling program. Oh, I shouldn't say, maybe Bay Lake a little bit. But other than that, we haven't heard of a lot of other jurisdictions that want to continue. If we go back to each individual city and township just having their own contract with a hauler, and we are kind of back to what we were a year ago, where they just come with us with a number. It's just that the number now is just 50%, but we don't help in trying to control that number with a broader impact, with a larger contract, so that we can drive those costs down. If that's making any sense.
Mr. Chair, though, but Nisswa has really driven that cost down, comparison to even what you were willing to contribute.
Gary, I have a question for you. Doing this RFP, when will we know the results of that? What would be the timing of that?
We were hoping early November, Mr. Chair, we were hoping early November-ish. We were going to go out in October, roughly a 30-day RFP, and then we'll get the results. So we're hoping early to middle November, have those results.
Well, Mr. Chair, so then why couldn't Nisswa go with the same RFP that the county's going with? I know they want to keep their hauler, but if they want to have the recycling, if we have a proposal, why wouldn't they go with the ones that we have? I think the whole point of what we're trying to do is trying to save money. The costs were skyrocketing, where we wouldn't even be able to keep the program going after a year or two.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chair, I think in Nisswa's particular case, they know what their service is. We don't know the kind of service we're going to get from the RFP with this. And I have seen, this is the second provider of service for Nisswa that I've seen. And the first one, again, was not meeting the standards that Waste Partners is meeting. So they've set the standard very high, and I think Nisswa just wants to maintain that because they don't know what kind of service they're going to get once that RFP is assigned. And I think that they've driven the cost down quite substantially from what we've paid in the past. And so my recommendation is that we consider making a motion to accept their request.
Commissioner Houle. Or excuse me, Administrator Houle.
Thank you. Thank you for the demotion. I appreciate it. Commissioners, this history, I think, is important here. We had contamination issues with recycling throughout the county, and so people were throwing things into recycling that did not belong in the recycling. They should have been paid to dispose of, but sometimes people are trying to find a less expensive way. So contamination was an issue. To Commissioner Coring's point, the recycling market, the bottom fell out of it. And so what we were finding was our costs were going up and up and up and up and up. In this particular instance, what we've adopted is a policy that says we're going to fund recycling locations at, is it 2 or 3, counting the landfill?
2.
2
Oh,
locations.
counting landfill, 1 more, so 2 total.
What I thought, 3 locations throughout the county, and we're going to fund those. If a city, however, wants to do additional recycling, which is probably a good thing for us because it does help to keep the mattress out of the ditch, right? Then we would entertain partnering with the city on the 50% cost associated with them having an additional recycling center throughout the county. And that's what Nisswa is approaching us to do, is to take us up on our offer. The difference here is that they want to use a different vendor. And we don't know today whether or not that different vendor would be a showstopper or an issue or how they're going to perform, and we won't know that till October, November. But what we do know, and what I think Nisswa needs to know, is the finances. And I think you can commit to say at a cost not greater than $35,000. We thought our costs were up to $95,000. So their half would have been more than that. So I think you could commit to saying at a cost not to exceed $35,000 today. What you, I think, are not in a position to commit to today is whether or not you will agree to make that commitment if they don't use the vendor that we come up with through the RFP process. There's still time to figure that out, because there may be another community in the county that wants to come forward and ask the same question, and they may have the same issue. I think it gets to the quality of service that they can expect and have gotten historically. I also think there's a local business component to this as well, that a city may have a waste hauler in their jurisdiction, and they want to have preference for that hauler. Okay, so there's some issues around, do we have to have the same hauler? Do we not? There's still some time to work that out. What I would suggest you could be prepared to do today is to allocate the amount, as long as, if another city came forward, you'd be prepared to do the same, and then to direct staff to figure out what are the pros and cons associated with the city using its own vendor versus them using the county's RFP. We may not care.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question to the city administrator, Nisswa? So what happens, okay, you're planning on $75,000. Okay, so let's say you get to August and you've spent your $35,000 of levy money and you've spent the $35,000 of county money and you're out of money. What are you going to do then?
Well, we're certainly understanding that we're going to commit to providing the service for the year. If it means that we have to allocate through some of our unrestricted reserve funds, through our general fund, we've talked about that. We will work very closely with our vendor to ensure that those are minimal to the extent possible. But that is something we would take upon ourselves to rectify, so that we could continue providing the service for the year. And that we have thought about that and know that that's a potential concern. But we are confident with our relationship with our vendor right now that we could minimize that to the extent possible.
Mr. Chair, one quick, to Gary, in our policy that we adopted in May or whatever, does it state that they have to use our hauler, or is that left open?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hoag, yes, it states they use our hauler.
So that may be something we have to amend if we do move forward on this, but I'm perfectly good with the program. I think it's a great program, so.
So where we're at here, from my perspective, is that I don't see a real issue with the dollar amount. It's whether they're going to use our hauler, our provider, or the person who rises to the top in the RFP process. And that is our policy, and that is a concern. So,
Mr. Chair, I could offer, we might not care. As long as our costs are fixed, as long as they're doing recycling consistent with the requirements for recycling in the state of Minnesota, do we care? Do we care who their hauler is?
Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Chair, I would, if I can, if they got a quote at $70,000 by themselves, what if that quote was $40,000 with us? We don't know that. If recycling costs are coming down, which would be great, this would be the first indication we've heard of that, because when we were paying the whole freight, it was $100,000. Now it comes back this year at 70. Well, if it's in a broader context, what if the 70 would be 50 or 40 or even cheaper? That's the difference between a one hauler for all of our drop locations and the one-offs with the cities. So I would say, I would think we would want to care. To the point of our RFP, we're going to have performance standards. No longer are haulers going to be able to do whatever they want because we're at their mercy. Then they don't get the contract. They're in breach of contract if they don't have their performance where we need it. We are pitching or are going out for dual stream instead of a single stream collection. That's very similar to what Waste Partners does. It's what we do at Ideal Transfer Station, and that's what we're changing to at the landfill. So some of those in-the-weed stuff is going to be very similar so that the performance is where I believe everybody expects it. So just some more context as to what we're trying to do with our contract.
Mr. Chair, maybe the right thing is that we don't do anything. We postpone this for a year until you can get those numbers and get those contracts to us so we know what we're talking about. And not just make it individually now, but let the program that we have stay in place until we can get those numbers, and then we're looking at 2022 to implement.
Mr. Chair, members, we have already communicated to municipalities across the entire county that we have made that policy change. And so I think they're already aware of it. We made some visits to different jurisdictions. I think the real issue here is the price is not the issue. Who hauls the trash is the only issue.
Yep.
And so I do think you could help the city of Nisswa establish their budget parameter. To Gary's point, maybe it does make sense for us to do an RFP countywide to make sure that we're keeping haulers honest from place to place to place. And we may want to do that, but it seems to me you could also refer that question to the Solid Waste Committee and let them wrestle with it and bring back a recommendation for you. Should it be a requirement? Shouldn't it be? But as long as your costs went from 95,000 down to 70, I think it's a good deal. And you get a recycling center.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I guess at this point, what you're recommending, we make a motion that we allow the 35,000 match that we would go with, and wait for the county to come back with a proposal in regards to haulers.
And I would say contingent upon.
Contingent upon.
So the chair is confused. Repeat that, please.
Okay. The motion would be is that we would accept Nisswa's proposal for the matching funds of $35,000 for their hauling, and that and with the contingency that the county will come back in regards to we identify the hauler.
Are we clear?
No, I don't understand what he's talking about.
So the money is not the problem. So we're proposing to let Nisswa know that 35,000 is the number, but that it's contingent on the RFP process telling us who the provider will be, and then they would have to comply with that in order to receive the 35,000. Is that?
That's what I understand the
heard.
motion is that you're authorizing the amount, but the Solid Waste Committee still needs to bring back a recommendation on whether or not that amount would be required to use our hauler or not.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Well, why don't we just make that decision today, whether or not Nisswa they want to use their hauler? Is that what you're saying? They can use their hauler or not use their hauler?
I would like to see them use their hauler.
Well, why don't you make that motion then?
That is their ask, and to be clear.
That is their ask.
That is their ask.
Well, why don't we just make that, why do we always have to refer everything back? Let's make a decision. I'm here to make a decision.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we accept the proposal.
One second, please. Commissioner Franzine had something to say.
If we make a motion for the $35,000, I want it somehow put in there that they can't come back later and ask for more.
Cost not to exceed.
Okay.
Commissioner Brecken?
Say that again.
So if you want to actually just take the action and not deal with the question of who's going to haul the trash, then you can. You can, what I would suggest then, the motion is to authorize the $35,000 match to the city of Nisswa for them to set up a recycling program.
With the cost not to exceed
$35,000.
$35,000.
Can I say something, Mr. Chair? So to me, it's like Mr. Houle said, they're asking for 35,000, but they want to go away from what the policy that we have set They want to use their own hauler. So that's the only decision we're making.
Yep.
I don't agree with that. I agree with going with our hauler, but I'm ready to vote on it. And so we might as well make a decision now, rather than studying it more. We'll make a decision now, whether or not they can go with their hauler. And I believe that's what your motion is, correct? Okay, perfect.
So the motion is 35,000 and contingent on them using our hauler.
No, that they use their hauler. They can use could stay with
Their
Waste
hauler.
Partners.
To approve their request is essentially what you're doing.
Yes.
Yep, we'd approve their request.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Hoag. Therese, if you'll call the roll call.
The way the motion is stated right now, I can't agree with it because he
Oh,
did
'cause
not put in.
Not to exceed $35,000. And she said that the city of Nissau would make up the difference over that, so not to exceed $35,000.
Commissioner Hoag, you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Therese?
Commissioner Franzine,
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken,
All right?
Commissioner Hoag,
All right.
Commissioner Coring,
No.
Commissioner Barrows.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Move on
Thank you
to-
very much.
Thank you, Ms. Max, we appreciate it. Item number 7 is the 50 Lakes Loon Conservancy, and Mr. Mike Hammer. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Barrows and Commissioners. And thank you, Commissioner Hoag, for bringing this forward for us. What we're looking for is a letter of support, and that you should have a packet that has the sample resolution there, along with the description of the property and our project. And what we're doing is we're partnering with the National Loon Center to procure loon habitat on East and West Lake in 50 Lakes. I represent 50 Lakes Loon Conservancy, and we've been working in a partnership with the National for the past approximately 6 months. We've been working back and forth on procuring approximately 4 acres on East and West Fox Lake. It's a marginal piece of property that probably shouldn't be developed and should probably be left in its natural state for the purpose of preserving loon habitat in Crow Wing County, and particularly on East and West Fox Lake. Been working with the Department of Natural Resources as far as is this a project that they would support? And I've been working with Andrew Herberg from the Department of Natural Resources, and he's identified several plans within the Department of Natural Resources that our project clearly fits into. One is the DNR 10-year strategic plan from 2015 through 2025, Minnesota Wildlife Action Plan, the Wildlife Action Network, the Ecological and Water Resources Division Strategic Plan, and also there's part of the Crow Wing County Plan, which is the One Watershed One Plan for the Pine River watershed. And we're not looking for any money here or any financial support. What we're looking for is the county to support a resolution of support that'll be part of our packet that we will send to the Department of Natural Resources, because we're seeking a grant to purchase the property. And this would just be a supporting document as part of that packet when we apply for our grant with the Department of Natural Resources. We're going through the Conservation Legacy Partners Program, which is part of the, what the funding comes from the Lessard-Sams amendment. So the money's already out there in the Lessard-Sams funds. That money goes into the Department of Natural Resources for them to apply or supply money through grant programs for projects like this, create loon habitat or preserve loon habitat around the state. And of course, we know loons are pretty pretty important to us here in Crow Wing County. It's one of the reasons why people love to come here. They love to listen to the loons, and anything we can do to support and help continue having loons in our area and not degrading their habitat and actually preserving their habitat should be a plus for everyone in the community and the state.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hammer. Any questions for Mr. Hammer?
Yes.
Commissioner Franzine?
Have you already purchased the property?
Yes, the 50 Lakes Loon Conservancy has purchased the property. And part of the grant program is we can't buy the property and then apply for the grant, okay? So that's why we partnered with the National Loon Conservancy, because we are now the owner, and then the National Center is now applying for the grant and would therefore come back and purchase the property from us.
Other
One
questions?
501c3 buying property from another one 501c3 with Lassard Sam's dollars.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Administrator
members
Hool.
of the board, Mr. Hammer, what's the tax status of the property right now? Is it in private ownership or public ownership?
It is in private ownership.
And do you
Yes,
know-
we are paying taxes on the property.
Do you know what the taxes are that Crow Wing County receives on the property?
I believe it's about $1,400, somewhere in that ballpark, because I think our next payment is somewhere around $738, something like that.
And this will not end up in public ownership, correct?
Down the road, yes, it would probably end up in public ownership.
Because the,
With that, a lot of times when things are put in public ownership, there's also stipulations that there will be also, it may be a lowering of the tax rate, and it would not become tax exempt, and more than likely, but we would still, whoever the eventual owner of or whoever is in charge of the property, and down the road, it could possibly be Crow Wing County. It could be 50 Lakes. We don't know where that's going to end yet because we haven't got through all the steps to see who's going to be the land manager when this is all done.
so we would, if we agree to this and they got the funds, we would no longer probably receive the $1,400 in taxes. If it ends up in public ownership, there is the potential for some PILT payments to be received. Depending on which PILT
Yes.
source that is, it can be fully cover the taxes or not cover very much of the taxes. So it depends, but I just wanted you to have the information, that's all.
Thank you. Pleasure of the board.
I would make the motion to move forward with the letter of support for this piece of property.
Motion by Commissioner Hoag,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Brecken. Therese, if you'll call the roll call?
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
No.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye, motion passes. So thank you, Mr. Hammer. We will get that resolution out to you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. You made a good decision, and we appreciate it, and so do the loons.
Morning, Gary. Morning, Jake.
Morning, Chair, Commissioners. Today we'll start with 4 budget amendments we requested to enhance our parks and trails of our county. The first one on the agenda was for a budget amendment of $75,000 to create a history of fire prevention at the new Paul M. Teedy Fire Tower Park in Pequot Lakes. I know there had been some discussion on this at a budget committee. We no longer are proposing a picnic shelter, but it would be benches up by the fire tower, potential asphalting from the parking lot to the picnic shelter for better accessibility for all, at least to the picnic shelter, and then work on probably some kind of a concrete patio with fire displays down by the picnic shelter and no longer up by the fire tower, so that easier access for all to see that. But that's the amendment here in front of you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So how are you going to take this? Are we going to take them and vote one at a time, or are you going to take all 1, 2, 3, 4 all together?
Well, they're presented as individuals.
Right.
Personally, I don't care how we do it. I do have some questions, however, on some of the items, so.
Okay.
I guess I was assuming one at a time.
One at a time? Okay, I was just checking to see. I didn't know if we were going to make a motion for the whole thing. So the first one that we're talking about, Mr. Chair and Gary, is the fire prevention displays. And what's the amount on that?
75,000 is the amendment.
Okay.
So, Gary, originally, when you brought this to us at the Budget Committee, it was 75,000, which included a shelter, and now we're not going to include a shelter, so why is the amount still at 75,000?
It was so that we don't know the overall cost on potential asphalt and the additional concrete, which is still a big chunk of what that concrete, a big chunk of that picnic shelter was the floor, if you will. So a lot of that cost is still going to be there. And depending on what exactly type of benches, potentially with a little bit of a kiosk over them for some shade or cover up by the fire tower. There's probably some overage in there, so we didn't run over and have to come back for 1,000 here, 1,000 there, that kind of.
So the board is aware, when I talked to Gary after our budget meeting, one of my concerns was, first of all, that there not be a shelter up at the top of the hill, but that the history display be placed at the lower level by the parking lot there for the ease of people that might have mobility issues to be able to see it, because they're not going to climb that hill if they're in a wheelchair or they have some other mobility issues. So now, and we did talk briefly about a hard surface to be able to get people over there, knowing that that granite trail would not accommodate people with some of those mobility issues very well. So that was a discussion that we did have, and so I'm glad to hear that that's included in there, so that in terms of ADA issues, that these people would be able to at least get to that shelter at the lower level and be able to enjoy some of the history that goes with those fire towers over the years, because that, I believe, will be lost in the next generations that are coming along. So I'm glad to hear that from you.
Mr. Chair, I will say that I talked to somebody who lives in Pequot, and they said they cannot, well, let me go back. I can remember when Paul Teedy proposed this, and I said to Rosemary, I said, well, this is kind of dumb. And I said, well, I'll just let him go along with it. Here again, I'm not afraid to say that I'm wrong, but I've talked to somebody that lives up there, and they said you cannot believe the amount of people that are going to this park and going up to look at the fire tower and accessing the area. You know, before I got on the county board, I thought, why is Crow Wing County in the park business? I thought that was dumb, but now that I live down by South Long Lake, every time I go home, there's at least 4 or 5 cars at this little park, and there's kids fishing down by the dam, and I see that this is a good thing. And we're using, if we were levying dollars, it would be, and charging people on their property taxes, it would be a whole different story for me. But when we're using land sale money and timber sale money to pay for these things, I think it's a great deal. And so So, Mr. Chair, I would so move to adopt the 2020 budget amendment for the benches, fire prevention, history display, and I actually thought the shelter was a good idea, so I would include the shelter up on top. As it was proposed in the budget committee, I would include that in my motion.
I would second that.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, seconded by Commissioner Franzine. If I might just ask one quick question to Gary. So if you include a shelter at the top, and we're including additional bituminous or whatever, and the cement pad, is that still going to be able to get done for $75,000?
I think it'll be tight, but for a shelter and the asphalt, for sure. Anything else down below, probably not at this point.
And by that, you mean the history display?
Oh, no, like, I take that back. Yeah, something's going to have to come off the board, if you will, yeah. So you can't have, if you will, currently for $75,000, you can't have the picnic shelter and the fire prevention display, I don't believe. There won't be enough money there for both.
Right, and that's what my motion is, Mr. Chair. That's what my motion is saying, that we will pay for what you have on the list here, along with the shelter, whatever that cost would be,
Oh, okay.
because we had it at the budget committee. Does that make sense? I don't know what that number is today. If you knew what that number is today, I could incorporate that into my
Sure,
motion, but I'm
the
saying that
picnic
we would-
shelter is about, you can say $50,000.
Right.
Yep.
So should we, Mr. Chair, so would we say then it would be 125,000? Would that cover it?
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I would amend my motion, if it'd be okay with the seconder, to have it be 125,000, the amount.
Yes.
Mr. Franzine, so do we understand the motion now?
Well, we do, but if I could, can we not get an itemized cost of each of these projects? So we know what?
You
what
sure
we are-
can. I'm sorry I didn't bring that, but yes, we sure could.
I just, it seems like any other project is fairly pinned down as far as cost, and this one's,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I mean, I support and encourage the enhancement of the fire tower, but I really would like a better handle on what the costs are going to be in regards to if we do incorporate that top, you know, a picnic area at the top.
Well, we have a motion on the floor to approve this at $125,000
Correct.
for a shelter at the top, the new trail that's going to be added on, the history
Prevention.
kiosks that will be there, and the cement pads, and the bituminous addition from the parking lot to the lower level shelter. Does that summarize it pretty well?
Yep.
Therese, if you'll call the roll call?
Commissioner Hoag,
no.
Commissioner Coring,
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine,
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken,
No.
Commissioner Barrows,
Chair votes no. Motion does not pass.
Are we able to make another motion?
Can always make another
No,
motion.
the next amendment for your,
On this particular
second.
one, could we request or make a motion that you bring this back to the next meeting with itemized costs for each of the projects
sure,
we propose here, and then we could approve a definite number?
sure.
So that's your motion?
That's a motion, yeah.
Motion by
Second.
Commissioner Hoag to bring back actual costs for this project. Commissioner Franzine, did I hear you second that? Second by Commissioner Franzine. Therese, if you'll call the roll call?
Commissioner Coring,
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine,
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken,
All right,
Commissioner Hoag,
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows,
Chair votes aye, motion passes.
So, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure can.
So, Gary, going back to the budget committee and these numbers here, I would assume that these numbers, you've got like the picnic shelter at South Long Lake, that's 75,000. I would assume that's pretty close, or I guess what we're doing, we're looking at something that's very specific at the number, or, I mean, I'm
Well,
trying to figure that out.
Sure,
So is
I
this
mean-
Is this not the number right here?
Yeah, so each one of those locations were a little bit different. So like the picnic shelter, that includes some additional grills, and we were creating a walkway back down to the dam and the fishing pier. So there's more cost than just that. That's just the heading. But I definitely can itemize out the costs, absolutely.
Okay. So are we, Mr. Chair, so are we gonna take the fire tower park, then we're gonna do that a different day? We're not,
Yes.
apparently not, okay, all right.
So the second one, Gary, is the kiosks on the trails.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this year, there was almost 10 more miles of mountain bike trail that were created near Rabbit Lake Township and the city of Cuyuna that enhances what is there for the Cuyuna Rec area. We are sponsors of those two trails, and at each one of those in the past, we have installed a kiosk that has a trail map. It has our county-wide map, and then what you can and should or shouldn't do on those types of trails. It's kind of a 3-panel kiosk. I didn't bring a photo of one, but I believe we have 12 or 14 of them located throughout our county currently, and we've received very positive feedback. So we were making an assumption here you guys would want to continue on with that type of sponsorship for our trails.
Mr. Chair, I would move 8.2, the 2020 budget amendment for the kiosks on trails.
Commissioner Coring makes the motion to approve the kiosks on the trails.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Franzine. Therese, if you'll call the roll call.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hogg?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Number 3.
The next one is for a picnic shelter at the South Long Lake Park. Currently, we have picnic shelters at Milford Mine. We have one at the Fire Tower Park. The proposal is to create the identical one and replicate that, same feel and experience at our third on-land park, if you will. We have 2 others that are islands, but and to create a trail that enhances the overall usability of the park.
Mr. Chair, I would move the adoption of 8.3, the 2020 budget amendment, picnic shelter at the South Long Lake Park.
Commissioner Coring makes the motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Franzine. Therese, if you'll call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hogg?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. 8.4, trail up.
Chair, could I just say one thing? I would just want to thank the county board. My constituents, thank you for voting yes on that. I wasn't sure if it would be a unanimous vote, but I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
8.4 is the trail updates at the fire tower.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this amendment would be to create another trail on the 40 acres that we currently have, and we are going to add additional granite to the main trail. As over the last year or so, we need to kind of shore up some spots, if you will, on the main trail to the fire tower.
Mr. Chair, how much additional trails will be added to this?
I believe it was like 0.8 miles of trail that loops around.
Okay.
And then the existing main trail, about 8,000 of this cost is to enhance it or make it better, if you will, than what we have currently with some erosion and stuff.
Gary, do you know what the Nature Conservancy is in regards to adding additional parcels around the fire tower?
I am aware of the Nature Conservancy, sir.
Yeah, I mean, how is that progressing, do you know?
Yeah, we had an application in for that, Crow Wing County, and that was through the Lassard Sam's Outdoor Heritage. And we were preliminary approved for the funding. And of course, what happened, COVID-19 hit, and all that funding was reallocated to different services. We have reapplied since for the 70 acres around and are hoping that there's been discussion but no decisions on if you were pre-approved in 2020, will that hold forward into 2021, or are they just going to, reconsider everything moving forward? We have yet to hear.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the budget amendment to increase 35,000 tax forfeit funds to update the trails.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Brecken,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hoag. Therese, if you'll call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Hoag,
Aye.
Commissioner Coring,
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine,
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken,
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. 8.5, the land use map amendment for David and Carolyn Dockendorf Trust.
Okay, Mr. Chair and members of the board, I'll present this one. So we have an application here to approve, table, or deny a request for a land use map amendment for waterfront commercial to shoreline district involving approximately 2.03 acres. The applicant owner is a David and Carolyn Dockendorf Trust. They have an authorized agent, which is Jim Kramer from KLD. Property is located at 10910 County Road 10 in Garrison, Minnesota. I'll refer to this. I think this is actually a good one. So to chat about up on the screen here, we have an existing approximately 5-acre parcel on Borden Lake, as you can see from the outline of both different colors. The tract as it exists today doesn't have the line through the middle, and I'll get to that. So it's just one big contiguous tract. There's a conditional use permit from a while back for a mobile home park on this property, operated as again, a conditional use permit. The zoning is currently waterfront commercial. The applicant wishes to split this lot into 2 tracts, creating a tract A and a B. Tract A being approximately 3 acres and tract B being approximately 2 acres. In doing so, they would like to shift the zoning of tract B in blue here to shoreline district, basically cutting off this dwelling, this house, from the rest of the waterfront commercial property on this side as a standalone parcel for sale for residential purposes. So that's the general gist of what's going on here today. Surrounding zoning in the area, I'm just going to get a look at that, is all shoreline district to the east and to the north. There we go. That's a good map. So again, here's the property, waterfront commercial right now. Again, the east half of this would turn to shoreline district under the proposal. All the zoning to the north and east is all shoreline district, and as you can see, mostly surrounding it kind of matches that zoning as well. In terms of what we've received from comments, Garrison Township recommended approval. That's in your packet. We haven't received any other comments at all. It was unanimously recommended for approval at the Planning Commission meeting on August 27th. And with that, I'll take any questions, and that's it.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I would move 8.5 on the county board's agenda, the land use map amendment for David and Carolyn Dockendorf Trust.
Second.
Commissioner Coring makes the motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Franzine seconds the motion. Therese, if you'll call the roll call.
Coring,
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine,
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag,
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. 8.6, Lakeview Condo Storage Final Plat.
Okay, Mr. Chair and members of the board, the last one we have here for Land Services is a request to approve, table, or deny the final plat of Lakeview Condo Storage. This is to create lots 1 through 10 in the Shoreland District for a common interest community plat that may include dwelling units, and then 34 lots proposed for non-residential uses to be individual commercial storage units only, located within the commercial 2 zoning area. This involves approximately 17.5 acres located in Government Lot 7, Section 10, unorganized assessment with 2 separate parcel IDs. A little bit of history to this one. I'll start out by, this is generally the concept of the final plat mirroring the preliminary plat, but you have a single, what was once a single parcel plus a different parcel down here that has now been changed into 2 parcels of land. One on the west is zoned Shoreland District, and one on the east, which is Commercial 2 zoning. Right along Highway 371, there's a frontage road, which is a county road, Soda Road, right in front here. That's how they access the property. And then across the road is North Long Lake. It's pretty visible from Highway 371. I'm sure many of you have probably seen the beginnings of this development along Highway 371. History on this one is back in February. There was a request to change the zoning on this property from waterfront commercial to the Commercial 2 and the Shoreland District. That was recommended and ultimately approved by the county board in March 2020. Then the applicant came back in April with a request to submit a preliminary plat. And that was unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by the county board on May 12th. So a little bit of the history on that one. In terms of what we've received, and I've gone through this with the preliminary plat, but just to reiterate, we had a comment from MnDOT about what their requirements are, from the Highway Department about what their requirements would be. We didn't receive any comments from the DNR or Lake Association. We did receive 3 comments. This is again as part of that preliminary plat from surrounding property owners that were unsupportive of it. Again, the preliminary plat did pass ultimately with several conditions, including one added by the county board later. With that, I should also add that we did receive financial assurity in the amount of $6,250, I believe, to ensure that the construction of the stormwater management on the property would be backed and it would occur by the developer. We've received all the necessary documents that go along with our final plats, including title opinion, declarations and covenants, and things of that nature. So with that, I'll take any questions, otherwise look for a motion.
Jake, I do have one question. In the document that I'm looking at here, the board action printout, it talks about lots 1 through 10 in the Shoreland District, which is the CIC, the Common Interest Community, and 1 through 34 being the Commercial Zone 2 properties. But if you go down just a little bit further, where it says additional condition A-type septic system meeting all requirements, it references residential lots 1 through 20, when it's my understanding 1 through 10 are the residential lots. Am I missing something there?
No, that's a good catch, Commissioner Barrows. That should say lots 1 through 10 because that is intended for the residential development area that could be dwelling units. So unsure why that's, apologize for that if it's a clerical error, but that will make sure, obviously. The intent there is that a septic system meeting the requirements of the ordinance is implemented for that lots 1 through 10. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure there wasn't 10 more residential lots included in there, which is not what we approved.
There is not.
Very
So
good.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would move the 8.6 on the county board's agenda, Lakeview Condo Storage Final Plat, the request for board action in our packet.
Commissioner Coring makes the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Commissioner Brecken seconds that motion. Therese, if you'll call the roll call.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hold?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Barros?
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next up is Sheriff Goddard.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Today was pretty fitting, being that it is a county board meeting at the same day of, for most of our students, first day of school. So I would like to take my time to please remind and help pass on the messaging. Our school buses are now out, but this year looks a lot different, not only for parent pickup and drop-off, which has been really magnified. I mean, the amount of people that the school districts are asking the families to deliver. So our traffic numbers are up, but our school bus routes have been modified heavily. So we're looking at not only the existing routes, but some added time that our school bus drivers throughout the area are putting on the road. So with everyone's cooperation, and please help spread the messaging, and we're going to be putting something out on Facebook today, so it's prudent and up to date, of reminder, the big yellow buses and the red lights and the stop signs are not just a recommendation. It is required by law, and in some cases can result for violations in an arrest. So we want people to take that seriously. And watch out, first day of school is always kind of a learning curve, but it's extra different and extra special this year with everything that we're trying to face.
Yep.
With that, any questions I would certainly entertain.
Mr. Chair, how many school buses have cameras on them today?
Well, the ones that we deal with, Reichert's, I know have cameras on all their buses, so that'd be the Brainerd School District. Specifically, Pequot, I don't know if they have all of them outfitted, but I know they have some. Crosby, I could not speak to, but I know we get complaints with evidence, I believe, from all of our school districts throughout the area. And then, and we're kind of unique in the fact that we have other school districts outside of the county that are on the border or into our areas. Example being Pine River School District, covers Gale Lake and part of Timothy Township. So they come into our county every day for pickup and drop off too. But a good point, thank you for bringing it up, Commissioner. Yes, there's a number of, not only are you going to get caught, but we'll have video evidence in most cases from the buses of what's going on. And the bus drivers do a great job. They're tasked with not only watching over the safety of our children, but they all have radio communication, and backup would be cell phone communication if needed, to make contact with their dispatch. So oftentimes when a violation comes in, it's something that is in progress or very close to being in progress, and it's something that's relayed to us through their dispatch in a timely manner. So within a few minutes of an incident taking place, we're made aware, and the drivers do a great job of getting a description and a license plate, and oftentimes they're very simple to track down.
Cool.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. County Administrator Hool, Senior Management Team.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I was not here for the senior management team meeting on the 24th. I don't know if anybody else wants to report on it. Doesn't look like a bum's rush wanting to do so. But I would defer the time to Tim, because I know he was out in Pequot Lakes this morning at Eagleview Elementary, and to the same point the sheriff was talking about, school bus safety that is significantly different, not only at Eagleview, but at a lot of the different school districts throughout the county, because of the hybrid model and who's coming and who's going, and daycare for kids in elementary school. So Tim, maybe you could give a brief overview of what you know from Eagleview, and to the sheriff's point, how that traffic issue is going to play out at school districts throughout the county.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity. Actually, I was up at Eagleview Elementary School. As you recall, you agreed to fund some of the safety improvements up there to deal with the hybrid model where more parents are picking up and dropping off. What I saw this morning was a really good sign. I think a lot of the Facebook and social media blasts from the sheriff's department, the police department at Breezy Point, the highway department, and even some of our physical things that we've done there, we made a really easy transition in the beginning this morning. I will be up there observing this afternoon. It's kind of completely different because parents will be there waiting for their children, sometimes 45 minutes in advance, and it kind of stacks up through the parking lots onto County Road 11. So we're watching that close. And I heard of another potential problem area at the Pequot Lakes Middle School and High School, although that's not our county road anymore. I think that concerns me, and we'll investigate that to see if we are able to provide some assistance with that too. So just to echo what the sheriff said, school buses are out there. I saw a whole bunch of them this morning. Please be mindful of that, and those are not suggestions. Those are the law, the stop arms.
Very good.
Happy to answer any questions about that. Otherwise, you do have a request for board action in your packet related to the Natural Resources Environment Committee. You may recall that we had a resignation, I believe it was Keith Seimer, if I'm not mistaken, who resigned. And we put out applications for interested folks. We got applications from Chris Pence, Mike Duvall, Daryl Shannon, Randy Moser, and Michelle Berger. And so we brought them forward for you guys. You could conduct interviews if you want to. You could make an appointment today if you want to. It's kind of up to you. But this is the response that we got from your request to advertise for that opening.
Administrator Houle, it's my understanding that this term runs through January 1st of 2021, if I understand correctly. And then we'll be reappointing at that point.
Mr. Chair, I think it is January 31st
January
of 2021.
31st.
Is that what you said?
Of 2021.
Yes.
Okay, I said 30th, but
I don't know. I'll have to look real quick if you want to give me a second.
And Mr. Chair, might I say something? Mr. Houle, we did conduct interviews already.
Oh, I'm sorry.
yep, we did.
That's a reflection of the fact I have not been here for a while.
No problem.
9/1 held interviews.
There you go. First day back. What are you going to do?
Almost there.
So it's here for your deliberation about what you would like to do if you've held interviews.
I will make the appointment today. I just want to make sure of the date.
Okay, that's all I have for you. If you want to make an appointment, that's fine. Happy to answer any questions you have about that or anything else related to county government. First day back, please be gentle.
Mr. Chair, I did confirm it is January 31st of 2021, replacing Keith's vacancy, the vacancy created by Keith
And as the
Samar.
chair, I will make that appointment for Chris Pence at this time to run through January 31st of 2021.
Thank you.
I believe now we need a motion to go into
Mr. Chair, before we go into closed session, can I address the board?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I personally am very concerned about us not being able to let the public in here, and I feel like they do not have access to address us when we're sitting here as a board. If you remember, we did approve a lot of grant money for high-speed internet. There's a lot of people that I don't know that they have the capability to do the Microsoft Teams, and I'm just concerned that they don't have the ability to address the board. I know we got an email saying that we're not going to read any more letters in open form. That really concerns me. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would move that the county board be opened up for the public to come into the meetings so that they can address the county board, and all committee meetings that they could attend those also. That's a motion.
So we have a motion to open the county board meetings to the public.
I would second that motion, but I would like to add with 6-foot distancing, like is required.
That sounds just fine with me.
So the motion is to open the county board meetings to the public with social distancing. Motion by Commissioner Coring, seconded by Commissioner Franzine. The only thing I would say is that we do have an emergency act in place, and that I'm not sure that we should be going against that, but that would be just my opinion. So, Therese, if you'll call the roll call, please.
Mr. Chair, first, how do we, maybe, Tim can respond to this in regards to managing this process?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, in fact, Commissioner Coring and I have had a conversation about this for, I don't know, it was a while ago. And so I think it's a fair question, and you're going to have to wrestle with when is the right time to do that. The risk factors, as I've understand them from the state, is that you should be considering how close are people to each other. I think that gets to Commissioner Franzine's point about the social distancing. How long are people together in the same space? Because that's also relevant. And how predictable is the movement of people in a setting? That's been the one that's been a little bit trickier for us, is the predictability of movement. You could put a limit on the number of people who would be allowed in your room, and you cannot screen that based on the content of what they're there for. And so if you put a limit on, I don't know, 50 people as the limit on the room, it's the first 50. We couldn't ask people to come in and out of the room because of the content of their speech. And so I think there are some issues with it. The day is coming. You're going to have to do it at some point. The question is whether or not this is the right point to do that. We have seen surges in other parts of the country as it relates to people gathering in close proximity, especially in indoor spaces. So that's the issue here, is the unpredictability of crowds that could spontaneously form at your meetings. It's your call.
I would add one thing too, that it's not, they don't have just access to us through the Teams, they can call in on a landline, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
So there is two methods for them to be participating in our board meetings, and I don't want the idea that it's only the Teams, because that is a kind of a restrictive issue for some of the more rural areas. So,
Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify,
yes.
Teams is also how they call, but you don't have to have high-speed internet or any internet to join by Teams. You can call into Teams.
Okay, thank you for that
So
clarification.
it's still Teams, it's just you don't need internet to join.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I was on a conference call with the Council on Aging, and they, at the end of the meeting, we did a survey of how many counties or how they're handling it. And it's a mixed bag. There's quite a number that are allowing people to come into their chambers.
Okay.
Along with that.
So,
I was going to add, I don't know if and I agree, you know, there's room for people to go, but would it be wise for us to have kind of the guidelines and policies in place before we just open it up? As to what do you do with the overflow, or where are they going to wait to get in, the social distancing, just to have a more formal process before we just say the doors are open, which could then create some unseen safety issues, potentially. I think we could put that together fairly quick, but just so we can share that with the public as well.
Mr. Chair, I believe that if we have 6-foot social distancing, and that's part of the motion, we're not going to have 50 people in this room because it's not going to allow for 50 people. I think it's pretty well stated.
Point well.
It's what it's what the stores do. It's what everybody does. They put the little dots, and this is where you stand.
Point well taken. Therese, if you'll call the roll call.
Commissioner Brecken.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag.
Aye.
Commissioner Coring.
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine.
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows.
Chair votes no. Motion passes. And with that, I believe we need excuse me?
Motion to go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D.05, County Attorney-Client Privilege on the Osawatomie Improvement District versus Crow Wing County.
Motion by Commissioner Coring,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Franzine. Therese, if you'll call the roll.
Commissioner Hoag.
Aye.
Commissioner Coring.
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine.
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken.
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows.
Chair votes aye. We are now in closed session.
Mr. Chair, it will take me a minute to get everything closed down and offline,
And
so,
Therese, we'll take
Bear with me.
we'll take 5 minutes.
thank you.